Launch control, this is Houston. We are go for launch.
Hold on to your lug nuts. It's time for an overhaul.
Turn it up some.
I'm your huckleberry.
I don't give jobs, I hire men. You won't give me anything, and I won't give you anything.
Collision, sir.
Whoa, relax. We're not even moving.
There's no crying in baseball!
Live and statewide, we're News New Mexico. It's Tuesday, October 2nd, 2012. I'm Michael Swickard. Bob Inlick's here. Jerry Harden is our producer-director. NewsNM.com. That's NewsNM.com is our website. You can podcast, you can stream, and also you can send us feedback on the Newsmaker line. We have Marita Noon. She has a great website. Now, listen to this. Energy Makes America Great. .org. You got to remember org or you don't get it. Now, Marita, you're talking about the watermelon system with the federal government and their green projects where they're green on the outside and they're red, as in communist, on the inside, right?
Well, yes, and they're also red like red ink.
Like
they're
red
green
ink?
on the outside like environmentalism, but they're red on the inside because they produce a lot of red ink.
Well, you know, Marita, this is Bob. It seems as if there really is no real market there. I mean, there might be a place for wind energy on an island.
There's no market. There's no market. We know it.
You know, on an island somewhere where it's very expensive to run the tanker over, and you got the trade winds or something like that. I mean, it might make a lot of sense there, but
yeah, there are cases where wind and solar do make sense. As I'm fond of saying, that solar is one of the most is used one of the single biggest users of solar power is in the oil fields, because it powers the equipment in a remote setting, and so it's great for that.
Well, I know where the best is. The best, Marita Noon, is the International Space Station. I'm telling you, they use solar, and it works fine for them because it's too long a cord to get back to Earth, you know?
Do you think?
All right, but what we notice is the current administration never admits all these failures. Instead, we're told, well, let's do it some more.
Yes, in fact, President Obama, in his 60 Minutes interview, the interview that was aired on CBS, well, not the interview that was aired, but the interview that was recorded to air on CBS, because they cut the part out where Steve Kroft brings up that these failures in green energy, and he points out that, Obama, in your campaign, you promised that there was going to be all these green jobs and this green economy, and this hasn't quite happened yet, he said to Obama. And President Obama claimed 10,000 jobs in the wind energy alone. But the important thing, I think, about this particular clip that can be seen on YouTube and is linked in my column, but that was not shown to the public on the 60 Minutes interview, the most important thing to me is that President Obama says, have we done enough? No, we haven't. We need to do more. And to me, that is a very scary thing for America, that instead of realizing that that of the $80,000 that has been given out through the stimulus funds for green energy projects, that 15 of them have gone bankrupt, and it may be 19. In my column I mentioned that there's 4 companies that we couldn't find enough data on to make a definitive assessment of. There are some websites that address these things that list these 4 companies as having gone bankrupt, and we couldn't find enough data on them. So there's 15 for sure, maybe as many as 19, and another 19 that are in financial trouble. That makes a total of 40, more or less, an average, or almost 40, that are in trouble. And President Obama says, oh, no, we haven't done enough. We're going to do more.
One of the things that that you point out in your column is that he says, well, you know, we haven't done enough, and he cites Germany, and there's another country in there. We need to, you know, make sure that they don't get ahead of us. Well, if there's no business model there, if it doesn't make sense, why, you know, say, well, we haven't done enough, throwing good money after bad. That's just dumb.
We have to stay up with Lithuania, because they're going to get ahead of us in losing money in green energy.
I mean, that is just stupid.
Isn't that funny? And Germany's backing out of it. It's almost like he hasn't read the news to know that Germany is backing out of all their green energy commitments.
Yeah.
I remember in 2009, there was a Spanish fellow who he was part of the university in Spain, and and Obama had touted Spain and its green energy economy as the paragon of excellence for the new economy, and this professor said, wait a minute, it costs 4 good jobs for each green job, and here's Obama saying, "Oh man, these guys have."
We want to be like Spain.
We want to be like Spain, high-speed rail and all this stuff. And now it's 2012, and Spain had to get rid of Zapatero and the green energy government, and they have a 25% unemployment rate. They're among the sick men of Europe, and Obama wants to double down. This is just stupid. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, that should be frightening to all Americans who are planning to vote on November 6th. And it should help them know which way to vote.
Marita, when I was a kid, I remember, or a young person, that they had a guy back from a prisoner of war camp. It was sometime in the 70s. And he had flown his F4, it would not eject correctly, so he flew it into the rice paddy, and he survived, and they had him off to the side, and he was all beat up, and they were yelling at him, and there was a guy in the cockpit. He had armed his seat, but it did not go off when he wanted to eject. And the guy was monkeying around with it, and the guy yelling at him said, "Tell us everything about this jet, because we have our expert, and he'll know if you're telling the truth or not." At that moment, the expert blew himself 300 feet in the air with that seat. And then this guy, I remember him telling me that story, and he said, at that point, I realized they were not experts on the F4. They were not experts. We'll have more with Marita noon. EnergyMakesAmericaGreat.org.
You're listening to News New Mexico, where we look out for people who depend on paychecks from New Mexico businesses every single day.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too.
Marita has made Nancy Pelosi mad. She's going after your dog.
Well, I hope I made her mad. I don't want her coming after my dog, but I do hope I made her mad.
I'm Michael Swicker. You got Bob Inlick here. We're talking with the Marita Noon, EnergyMakesAmericaGreat.org, and we're talking about the facts are on the table, and people intentionally choose not to pay any attention to green energy. I can't believe we have a society that is that intentionally ignorant.
Michael, there was this editorial from Bloomberg. Romney's energy plan ignores the success of solar and wind projects.
And that was printed. Let's see, who's the newspaper? It is Tuesday, August 28th, the Las Cruces Sun-News. Here's your sign. You're stupid to reprint that.
It was in the Las Cruces paper?
Yeah, but it was a reprint of something that came out of Bloomberg View. And it's just, you see this stuff. And
we got Google, for God's sakes. We got the internet. We got 1,000 resources, and people have to be intentionally ignorant to go down the valley of stupid this way, don't they, Marita?
Well, they do, and you mentioned you've got Google. Google has announced that they're going to power a new data center using wind power, and you got to look at that and say, wait a minute. Obviously, this is a PR stunt for Google, and obviously Google has more money to throw away than the average business has, because the average business cannot intentionally choose to use a more expensive source for their energy. And then you also have to ask yourself, okay, well, what is their backup power.
That's what I was going to ask. Is if I ask them anything on Google and it doesn't come back, does that mean the wind died for a second?
Exactly. They can't run their search engines because of that. Yeah, it is a mystery.
And one of the big problems with wind is it comes up in the afternoon when the wind comes up, but just when people go home and start turning on their microwave ovens and TVs and stuff like that, that's when the sun goes down, the wind goes down. So when the peak load happens, the wind is very, very weak. I've been looking at Bonneville. They've got a website. It's down to like 1 or 2% the last couple of days. It's stunning how inefficient wind is if you look at the real data of what it puts out versus when the electrical demand is.
Yes, and it requires, basically it requires natural gas as its backup. And natural gas is great, nothing against natural gas here. But if what the utility company has for their power in that community, based on what the resources there are, for example, here in New Mexico, we have the 2 power plants, the APS, and we have the Four Corners station. Those are both coal-fired power plants, and they provide the majority of our electricity in this state. And conveniently, those 2 power plants are located where they are because there is a big coal mine, which I've been down in, right there in the Four Corners area. So you use the resource for electricity that you have. In Rhode Island, on the other side of the country, they use primarily natural gas because they have no coal in that area. Other areas are well suited to nuclear, which is one of the reasons that France is mostly nuclear power, because they have no resource, and nuclear power requires so little fuel to make electricity, it's easy to transport that minimal amount of uranium.
More with Marita Noon when we get back. We're News New Mexico, 22 minutes past the hour.
Listen to News New Mexico anywhere in the world through the TuneIn radio app on your smartphone, tablet, or computer.
Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
No. We have a lot of stuff to fear. Marita Noon's on the Newsmaker line. I'm Michael Swickard, Bob Inlich's here. And Marita Noon, you're able to do something I can't do. You've written the words Barack Obama's second term. Oh, I can't make myself write those. And when we talk about the only thing to fear is fear itself, I have to say I fear a second term of Barack Obama for a lot of reasons. What are your concerns?
Well, my concerns are really the same as yours, I'm sure, but of course I focus on energy issues, and my concerns are that we will have more of the same as far as his investment in green energy, which, as we have seen, is failed. If he had taken those same amount of dollars, $80 billion allocated through the stimulus funds for green energy projects, and he had taken that $80 billion and put it towards infrastructure for natural gas as a transportation fuel along the interstates, I think we would see some real progress in that. Now, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think the government should be doing that.
I don't either.
If we had to spend the money, if he was going to shove $80 billion of borrowed money out the door towards green energy projects, it should have gone to something that we know would work. And something that we know would work is providing the infrastructure for CNG or LNG. Personally, I prefer LNG. But to provide the infrastructure for CNG or LNG along the nation's highway interstate system, that would have made a real difference. Instead, he'd sent it out to his friends in these green energy projects, which, as I've delineated in this week's column, have gone bankrupt. 15 of them specifically that I outlined have gone bankrupt. I was speaking in Farmington 2 weeks ago, and before I spoke, a gentleman and I were chatting, and he said to me, "Do you think President Obama is going to be as friendly towards natural gas in a second term as he is now?" And I looked at the guy and I said to him, "Do you remember your mother teaching you that actions speak louder than words?" I said, no, he's not going to be as friendly to natural gas in a second term as he is now, because President Obama's energy policy, we see through his actions, is driven by the environmentalist agenda. And back, I believe, May or June, several months ago now, Sierra Club came out with a new program against natural gas. So we can assume that President Obama will follow suit in a second term and decide that fracking is somehow evil, which has produced the abundant resource that we have in this country. And it's a very scary thing, a second term of Obama.
Marita, $80 billion could get you about 20 nuclear power stations, and 20 would run a great deal of the power of America, the electric grid, but also could power a lot of desalinization of water with its excessive, a nuclear power plant likes to run 100%. It doesn't really want to run 50% or 70%. It likes to run 100, and so that extra power could desalinate water and could be making, when you have extra power, could be making hydrogen fuel, could do all of that. You could have had 20 nuclear power stations up and running right now if you could get past all the lawsuits.
Yeah, we definitely could. And the reason I went with the CNG infrastructure in my comment is that President Obama said that this money was going to help us toward energy independence. And nuclear power is electricity, and as I harp on, we are already electricity independent. We are
independent. Marita Noon, EnergyMakesAmericaGreat.org. Thank you, Marita, for what you do.
Great conversation.